If you're thinking like, I want to overpower and do horrible things to a person, right? If you're one single person, you're going to target something that's easier than if you're a group of 4 grown men.
3 children, though, isn't easy. That's chasing
It is if you've
cats.
gained their trust.
Yeah,
I don't know. Again, I'm not arguing pro or con on this one. It's hard. It's hard to tell. And then I guess a few other things we need to mention, because I'm just going to move this forward a little bit. One is that apparently von Eyman he was reported to be preoccupied with children. Whether that, like we've been arguing back and forth, Mr. B did say that he was preoccupied with children, and that he actually claimed to have also taken 2 girls from a football match and killed them.
Oh, this is the 73 case.
Yeah.
1973?
It is, actually.
Did he actually claim that, or was he just accused of that?
No, he told Mr. B, so this was like in an encounter, he told Mr. B, oh yeah, I took 3 kids, several years ago I took 3 kids from a beach and did this to them, and then a few years later I took 2 girls from a football match. He didn't ever like say specifically like, it was these kids and I took them. So I think, to be honest with you, that lends additional credibility to me that he was telling the truth versus like him just kind of bragging. Because if he were trying to brag, he would have said like, I'm responsible for the Beaumont kids, I'm responsible for this specific case. It wouldn't have been like a vague, yeah, I did this thing, what?
Yeah.
In my mind.
I'm always amazed that people could commit these heinous crimes and then actually brag to people.
I agree.
I guess Mr. B was one of his fellow pervs, right? I think.
The sense that I have is that Mr. B was kind of like an associate, not one that was responsible for like actually killing and kidnapping and things like that, but that he was granted some sort of immunities for his testimony. Yeah. But the case that Steve was alluding to was that Joanne Radcliffe and Christy Gordon, our 2 girls, did go missing from a football game in Adelaide in 1973. The other issue that there is I know we didn't mention this when we were kind of going through, but the description,
skipped it.
Yeah, the witness's description of the blonde man in the blue swim trunks, they guessed that he was in his 30s, which was older than von Eyman would have been. But photos of him from around that time do actually really closely match the sketches. He was kind of a sandy blonde at that point. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention the first reason that anybody knew about von Eyman. And that is the night of May 10th, 1972, which is just weird. If you read his Wikipedia page, you will find a heading called The Good Samaritan. And on the night of May 10th, 1972, 2 gay men were thrown into the River Torrens. And this attack was widely believed to have been carried out by a group of police officers.
Yeah, they were from the Vice Squad, I think.
Yeah, and one of the men did drown, and the other one survived with a broken leg or maybe broken ankle, accounts vary, broken something. But he, I guess, played dead until the cops left, crawled out of the river, crawled to a road, flagged down a passing car. The driver took the man to the hospital. The driver was Bevan Spencer von Eyman, which is weird. Like, I know.
You would think he would have, pushed the guy back down the riverbank and then gone down there and murdered him.
It's just a little weird.
Not gonna hurt him.
I guess.
Which is it just kind of brings up that stigma that we have about psychopaths, that we're like, they just want to kill everyone, but they don't.
Apparently,
he kill a certain sect.
Yeah, he has very specific tastes, I guess.
So anyway, that's him, and I kind of like him. I wasn't able to find explicitly where in South Australia he was living at the time of the disappearance of the Beaumont children, but it sounds like he was in the area. He, kind of casually claimed that he was responsible for a lot of these disappearances. I think he was probably certainly capable of it. He kind of matches the description. I don't know. Yeah, I think he's a plausible
He certainly is.
Suspect.
We'll probably never know unless, he's still alive, so he might fess up one of these days.
He's still alive, but he has the possibility of parole, even though people think he's not gonna ever make it out. But if he were like, yeah, I did those crimes, like, he'd be dead pretty quick. I mean,
He's never going to get out on parole anyway, though. Somebody needs to convince him of that.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
say, dude,
we'll see.
you know, but there might be a deathbed confession, you know.
Yeah, hopefully. One can hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah,
Your
well,
guy.
Steve has a guy, and Steve really likes this guy.
Yeah, my guy's just a total champ, too.
Yeah.
So thanks for whoever saddled me with this one.
You volunteered.
I actually didn't. I said I don't care. Joe was the one who was typing
I
that
think we
day.
all said we don't care.
Yeah, not just care.
All right. Well, let's talk about this guy. In true killer fashion, he's got 3 names.
Okay.
He's always identified as Arthur Stanley Brown. We're just going to kind of take him, as we do with a lot of these guys, we're just going to take you kind of through who they are and what they've done, and then why it's relevant to the case. So, Arthur was born 1912, lived in a town most of his life, a place called Townsville.
Creative.
Totally sounds like it's out of a cartoon.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Townburg.
Yeah. Townsville is northwest of Brisbane. It's like 1,300 kilometers, so it's a good distance away from there. But that was kind of a landmark I could find.
What is that in miles?
I don't know, Joe. What is that in miles?
1,300 kilometers?
Yeah.
That's 43 miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. All right. I'll look it up
anyway,
If
later.
you want to, I can get my phone and get the calculator.
No,
No, I
it's
don't want
okay.
you to do that. So Brown did marry. He married a woman whose name was Hester Anderson in 1944.
I'm sorry. The name Hester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Devin likes the name Hester.
Was she wearing a red letter?
Hester had 3 children of her own from her first marriage, and I'm going to say, thankfully, she never had any children with Arthur. According to you'll see it referred to as either the family secret or the family legend. Everybody knew in the family that Arthur had a thing for kids and that he was a pedophile. And there are allegations that he molested a number of children in the family. And I don't just mean his wife's children. It sounds like he was any children in the family that he could get his grubby little hands on.
Is this the one that the book's being written about, or is it a different person?
What book are you talking about?
The Satin.
Oh, no, that's Harry.
It's a different guy? Okay.
That's Harry Phipps.
Got it.
Yeah, that's a different
I'll talk
guy.
about that. Never mind.
That's
Sorry.
totally different person.
2 dudes. Very similar backgrounds.
Yes, but it's from the accounting. The parents told the kids to keep away from him, and they told him why. They were evidently didn't hide the fact that they considered him a pedo.
I don't understand why they didn't just report him to the police or hang him or something.
I say the same freaking thing. I don't know, but I did learn an interesting slang, which is rock spider. Evidently, that's slang for a pedophile in Australia, and I'd never heard of that one.
I didn't know that either. Yeah.
The kids used to, all of the kids in the family would refer to him as a rock spider, so they all knew, stay away from that guy. He is pretty well known because of a case that happened. It's a disappearance and killing of 2 young girls in 1970. It's the 26th of August, 1970. We have Susan and Judith McKay, and these girls are 5 and 7. And they disappeared from a suburb, which is Aitkenville. I believe is how you pronounce that.
Sounds about right.
Their bodies they disappeared on the 26th. Their bodies were found 2 days later in a creek bed, and they had been molested, and both of them had been stabbed in the chest 3 times apiece.
Ugh.
One of them was strangled. The stabs weren't what killed them. One of them was strangled, and one of them, it was asphyxiated with sand.
Asphyxiated?
Yeah, that word.
Yeah.
Which
So they just held her down and poured sand in her mouth.
I don't know if that is that or shove face in sand till
That's
you run out of
possible,
oxygen too.
Yeah, that could be.
I don't know, but the hunt for the girls was huge, and there eventually was a big reward put out for information. It was $10,000 at the time, which is equivalent to about $100,000 today. People came forward. They had all these stories of what they had seen. But some people, 2 people who came forward that would become important to this are a man who said he saw the girls at a bus stop at 8:10 that morning, and then another person who said he saw the girls in a car at a gas station at 11 o'clock in the morning. And the guy at the gas station said he overheard the girls, one of them saying, "You said you were going to take us to see Mummy. I want to see Mummy now." So that kind of, to me, I don't know why. Well, I do know why it was discredited at the time, but we won't get too much into that. So here's what goes on, though, is that people say they see these girls in a car, and the car description is really, really bad. It turns out to be described as a blue car, but there's 3 different kinds. There is a Holden EH, which is kind of it's like a late 60s, that flat square style of car.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yep, there's a couple of witnesses who say, well, no, it wasn't that. Instead, it was a Vauxhall Victor, and the Vauxhall is more of a 1950s roundish car. You know,
they don't look much alike.
They don't look much alike at all. And what's even worse is that the people who say that it was a Vauxhall Victor, they eventually changed their description to a different kind of Holden. I think it's a Holden FJ, which is also kind of a 1950s roundy style looking car. But the one thing that those two people do agree upon is the fact that this blue car had a driver's side door that wasn't the same color as the rest of the car.
Interesting.
Yeah, if you're going to be a handy tip for you would-be serial killers out there, you want to not have cars like that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
You want a gray Ford Focus.
Yeah, perfect.
or an Escort or something, but a Honda.
Yeah.
Honda Accord.
Kia.
Maybe a Kia.
You want a Kia.
Maybe a Kia. Well, the point is, the cops went with a Holden.
Okay.
They decided it's got to be the Holden. I don't remember. I think it was the EH is the description they went with.
Sure.
So people are looking for Holdens that have a weird colored door, and obviously never find the car. We then jump forward to 1998. And at this point, one of his relatives sees a TV show where the case of these 2 girls is, it's one of those kind of cold case rehash TV shows. Mm-hmm. And she says, well, the description kind of sounds like that skeezy uncle of mine. And she reports him. And, okay, she sees the sketch of the man. They had a sketch of the man who's driving the car. And you think, well, okay, it's like 30 years later. It can't look like the same dude, except that Brown really, he aged, but his face looked remarkably similar from 1970 to 2000. Mm-hmm. It got wrinkly, but it didn't sag or really change at all. He's one of those disturbing people who I've talked about.
Pact with the devil.
He's got
Weird
that painting
portrait,
somewhere.
yeah.
He doesn't look like he ages.
Well, that explains something here, because I was going to mention this later, but being born in 1912, the guy on the beach was described as mid-30s, and he would have been 54.
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe he did just age really, really well.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we've had this conversation. I have an uncle who is in his 70s, and if you didn't know it, you would think he was in his early to mid-50s. And you both have met him and probably didn't realize how old he was.
Yeah, my mom, I have memories of her getting carded. You don't have memories until you're, really like 5, 6. She had me when she was 35.
Wow.
I get carded still, which is weird.
I get carded all the time.
You do not.
I get carded very rarely. Yeah.
You get carded when you buy
but
firearms.
there are people who definitely just age well.
Yes. Well, this guy, okay, so we're 30 years later. The cops, when they go ahead and they follow up on this tip, and then suddenly they start realizing some things, like he had a Vauxhall Victor at the time that the girls were murdered. And lo and behold, it was blue, and it had an off-colored door.
Huh.
And he did some weird stuff, like he took the door off and he buried it and he replaced it with another door, and then later on went and dug that door back up. His family's like, you're so weird, what are you doing? He gave some weird excuse about how he didn't want to be involved in the case, and like, really, to me, things that call suspicion to yourself, yet nobody did anything at the time.
That's kind of just a lot of work when he could have just
Yeah.
taken it somewhere and got to a body shop and gotten it repainted.
Yeah.
Yeah, repaint
I
the whole
guess.
car.
Although on the other hand, if there's this search happening for a car and you're a responsible auto shop, if somebody brings a car that matches that description with a weird
Well,
colored
but it
door
didn't match
in-
the description. That's the problem. Is the cops were going with the Holden,
Oh,
and he
that's
had the
right.
Vauxhall.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
he totally could have
He
done
could've.
something simple and not
But
been so.
But for all he knew, they were just
Yeah.
he
Well,
was being smart. I don't
yeah.
know.
No, he wasn't being very smart at all.
I would have pushed it into the river and reported it for insurance.
Yeah, for
And
real,
reported it
though.
stolen, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's some of the other things that kind of became damning evidence against him is that he, for 30 years, God, I think it was like 30 years or something like that, he was a carpenter and he worked for the Queensland Department of Public Works. Takes care of public buildings is kind of the simple way to think of that. And one of the things he had to do was he had been working at the time the girls disappeared at their school.
Yeah.
So he would have seen them.
Great, painting the school, right?
I don't
Sorry,
think he
I'm
was
sorry.
painting.
I'm
That's-
making a TV reference.
Yeah, I
I'm
was
sorry.
totally going to say, wait a minute, you're making a TV show joke.
I am. 10 points to Ravenclaw for whoever
Yeah.
figured that out.
God, do we have to do the Ravenclaw thing?
Yes, Ravenclaw.
Okay.
Ravenclaw?
The Harry Potter joke. Point being, he gets hauled into court. They press charges. The first trial ends in a hung jury. They try him again. His lawyer then files a motion, and it eventually goes through saying he's not fit to stand trial because he was starting to suffer from dementia and he had Alzheimer's. And he died in 2002, and they're fairly certain that he is responsible for the murder of these two young girls.
Yeah. But
they can't say for sure because there's things at certain times. So some of the stuff is spotty. Like they know he was at the school where these two girls were at.
the two girls that were murdered.
That were murdered. But like for the Beaumont children, they don't have records because there is, there was a giant flood. And it wiped out a bunch of records because,
Yeah.
back in the day when everything's done in paper, waterlogged
Yeah.
records are useless.
Yeah.
But they think that he might be involved in this because if he was working for the Department of Public Works, he could be connected to the Beaumont case because that means that he would have gone where they told him to go.
Yeah.
It's a long way away from where he lived. It's 2,500 kilometers. It's 1,500 miles.
Yeah.
I think I actually did the math on it. It's 1,500 miles.
But people do have to travel that far for work, especially in Australia,
where
because
everything's kind of far flung.
everything is very far away from
Well,
yourself.
a lot
True.
of the things that are major are on the coast, and the coastline is long, so it's going to be a big area.
Mm-hmm.
But I get that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think this guy's kind of weak.
Well, no, I mean it's there's some other thing. Well, I don't know that he's necessarily weak. I mean, there's the whole he looked younger than he actually was bit. There's working for the Public Works Department. The record's being destroyed it's the Brisbane flood of '74 is the one that did it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that, or there's the fact that he worked for the Public Works Department, so theoretically he probably had access to the records room to go file his reports and stuff.
Yeah, he could have removed
destroyed.
files.
Yeah, he could have
could've.
destroyed the records of what he did.
Yeah, although if he was just a regular working stiff, I'm not sure how much time he would have had to spend loafing on the beach. Getting to know young children.
That is kind of the odd. One of the things that's hard for me with this is that he would have had to have been on the beach and been there for an extended amount of time, as I said before, because the kids didn't go to the beach every day, so
Not
he would just
every
be
day.
prowling around.
But if he were working at their school,
Jane or Arna's,
if he were working at Jane's school, for instance, and had developed a relationship with her,
and then bumped into her at the beach, that's
because I think the sense that I had of those children was that Jane was the
responsible.
Well, she was the responsible one, but she was also the most shy of them. So I think that, had she accepted someone in general, the other two would have followed her lead. If she said, no, it's okay, you guys, this is my friend, they would have been like, oh yeah, of course that's okay. Jane says it's okay, so it's okay.
I don't like Brown for this one. I think that it's a stretch for him to be that far from home.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I can see why people would lump him in, especially when everybody kind of knew he really had a thing for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We were promised some more suspects. There are actually 3 more. I know they're a little weak.
Yeah, they do kind of progressively get
Weaker.
lower and lower on the possibility
It's weird.
chart.
It's like I organized it that way or something.
Something.
The next 2 are really kind of weak because they were really way too young to have been this guy on the beach in his mid-30s. Although, again, that doesn't necessarily rule
Eyewitness
them out.
testimony sucks.
Well,
It doesn't
sucks,
have to
but
be mid-30s, but yeah.
yeah, also the guy on the beach might not have been involved at all.
Yeah.
And here's the deal, supposing you were that guy, and you're living in Adelaide at the time, and you hang out on that beach, and you knew the kids, and you read about this in the paper, are you going to come forward and say, hey, I hung out with the kids a few times, but are you going to do that?
I guess I would.
I wouldn't.
I guess, yeah, and maybe this is like the difference between like being a lady and being a dude. But like I guess I would, because I would have nothing to fear from, right?
Oh, really?
Well, no, but I think you would
Really?
say like, yeah, like here's my story. Do everything you can to like search my house, see if I've ever been prescribed any, just do everything that you
So
can.
here's the difference. There's two problems here. One,
I know.
you're a woman.
I know.
But 2, it's also 1966, and it's easy to just fall off the radar and stay away because any cases easily, and I will say at the time I feel like whether it was Australia or England or the United States or wherever, things like this become a witch hunt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
I guess-
as soon as you do something, everybody is putting you under the microscope.
Yeah.
And that's
I guess for me, like, he would have had to have left town, right? Because if this guy lived in that area and stayed in that area, the fact that like so many different witnesses placed him with the Beaumont children, you go out one day to dinner and people are like, oh my god, it's you.
He looks
You're the
like-
one I saw. Police, everybody, this is the one I saw. Like that's what's gonna happen in that case, right?
That
So either you come
could.
forward or you leave.
That could happen. Well, no, I mean, you could just. Here's why I probably would not come forward if it had been me. I would probably stop going to the beach, but I wouldn't necessarily leave town. And if eventually I do get busted, I just say, hey, I never had any reason to think that it was me. I never had anything to do with this. And then the thing about it is
except for if somebody, like a bunch of people say, no, we saw you with the kids.
yeah.
Then you have to explain why you didn't come forward, and that makes you look even guiltier.
Yeah.
This is a circle that we
Well,
can get into.
but you can pretty easily. It is. There's good arguments on both sides. But the thing about it is if you come forward, then you become a person of interest. Then somebody at the police department leaks it to the press. And then, once it's out in the press and your name and your photograph are out there,
Your life is destroyed.
your life is
Absolutely.
over.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so,
it's like both arguments, right?
yeah, that's why I probably, if it had been me, I probably wouldn't have come forward.
I'd just go on
Yeah.
a really long vacation.
Yeah, I
But
think so, or find a job in another town. But let's get back to our next 2 suspects. Well, these guys actually could have been involved. I mean, they were not good people, but they were really way too young to have been this 35 to 40-year-old guy.
Well-
But that doesn't mean they weren't involved. They maybe could have been involved.
Yeah.
This is not necessarily just one guy that did this.
And as we've talked about, like both Steve and I had suspects that were not mid-30s, but definitely matched the police sketches.
Yeah.
On either end. So
And I want to throw in one more suspect, by the way, Jane. I think she abducted the 2 youngest.
No.
Oh, come on, Joe.
okay, so
get
what's
to
your
the
first
point.
one?
All right, let's go right to the real suspects here. James Ryan O'Neill. So again, this guy is not a strong suspect, but we'll talk about him for a minute anyway. He was born Lee Anthony Bridgart, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I mean, it looks like you can pronounce it Bridgart, but I'm going to go with Bridgart. But he was born in 1947, so makes him a bit young. But in 1971, he was charged with 12 crimes related to abductions and sexual assaults of 4 boys. So he skipped town, skipped bail.
Weird.
Yeah, really weird. And went to West. I mean, if somebody has abducted and assaulted 4 boys,
why would you put them on bail?
Why would you let them? Yeah, I mean, really.
Well, because you don't know that they have, right? I mean,
I guess I would set bail awfully high, but well, anyway, he skipped bail, went to Western Australia. He changed his name to James Ryan O'Neill, and it was during his time in Western Australia that he actually told several people that he was the one who carried out the Beaumont kidnapping. I guess people didn't take him all that seriously. This was, this was again not that long after. This is like 5, 6, 7 years after, and it was still a pretty huge deal. So it's kind of surprising that nobody ever talked to the police about this until far, far later. But anyway, in February 1975, he abducted and murdered a 9-year-old boy named Ricky Smith, and not too long after that, he did the same thing to another 9-year-old named Bruce Wilson. And Bruce Wilson's body was found in May, and James O'Neill fell under suspicion for the killing, and eventually was dragged downtown and interrogated. He fessed up. He took the police to Ricky Smith's body. Yeah, and so he was kind of busted. He was convicted of the crime. He's a sociopath. He has sort of hinted that he might have been involved. He was interviewed for 3 years by a detective named Gordon Davey, who eventually came to believe that he was the guy who kidnapped the Beaumont children. But again, he was only 18 years old when the kids disappeared, so I don't know. Again, but again, the guy on the beach might not have been the kidnapper. I haven't been able to find any pictures of him, but I've also read that he doesn't look like the kidnapper's description. But again, we don't know that the guy at the beach was actually the kidnapper.
right.
That's the South Australian police have questioned him, and they don't think he's a good suspect. And he apparently was involved in a lot of abductions of kids. There were a series of other ones between Ricky Smith and Bruce Wilson. There were like another 4 or 5 who were abducted, but they managed to escape. So his MO was again to kidnap the kids one at a time.
Was he the one? Is he the one who, when asked, has confessed to every abduction that they've asked him about?
Yeah.
Or is that somebody else?
That was our next suspect.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the next one was the one where they were like, "Oh, you did this one, right?" And he's like, "Well, I was in that area, right? This is this guy.
I was in that area,
I was in that area, but I don't remember if I did it or not."
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. That's
a true psychopath.
That's Percy.
Yeah, Derek Percy. Ernest Percy. Yeah, very famous Australian criminal. He murdered a 12-year-old girl named Yvonne Toohey, and he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Which doesn't mean that he got to walk free. I mean, he's still locked up. Some have said that he's psychotic, maybe schizophrenic, that he had this legitimate psychiatric issue whereby he really honestly couldn't remember a lot of stuff that he'd done. Because that's what he would always say. It's like he would say, "Oh, I was in Adelaide. I was right there in the immediate area, but I don't really remember killing anybody or abducting anybody."
Right. I was there.
I can say that about every day of my life.
Yeah.
I remember being there. I don't remember killing anybody.
Yeah.
I remember being in Portland when Kyron went missing, but I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I was here.
Careful there.
I know.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, I don't think he was. I'm not sure that he's crazy at all. I think he was just a sociopath. Luckily for us, he died in prison in 2013.
But he was also much too young.
He was also again too young, but again, he could have been involved in some way or another. He placed himself at the crime scene on that day, but then said he couldn't recall if he did it or not. But here's the deal: it's like say everybody they asked him about, he'd say, "Oh yeah, I was right there. I actually don't remember actually kidnapping that particular kid and killing him." He said this stuff. I think he was just playing the cop.
I really do. He was jerking the chain.
Yeah. He was Derek Percy. Apparently, they found maps in his possession of the scene of the Beaumont crime, with the area circled with a pen. But that doesn't necessarily mean much. I mean, he might have just...
It might have been this is terrible to say, but it might have been a fan thing.
Yeah, it could have been. Or it could have been he just
Copycat.
wanted to... it could have been he wanted to have something to just sort of implicate himself, but I mean, nothing serious. I mean, a map with a circle drawn on it is not going to get you the electric chair. But
It's not going to get you the treasure either.
Yeah, it'll drive the cops crazy. It'll drive the public crazy and the parents crazy. But it doesn't get them much of anywhere.
But again, he was much too young, according to what
He was,
got.
he was way too young. It's not even apparent that, it's thought, everybody believes at least, that whoever did this would have had to have a car to get the kids out of there quickly.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and it's not clear that he had a car. It's not even clear that he even had a driver's license at that age. And so, he was a weird person. I've heard this story. This is a little bit apocryphal, but that when he was a teenager, he was spotted by some other boys at a watering hole.